Hey everybody, this is Dan with Pain Free You. Today I have the pleasure of introducing Gabby from Utah. And Gabby was kind enough to volunteer to share her success story with all of you. So Gabby, welcome. Really thrilled to meet you and have you on the show here.
Absolutely. Yeah, excited to be here.
Cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Um, Kind of when some symptoms started, what happened, what was going on in your life, which might point us back towards this whole mind body space, and really, walk us through some of your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So my story started in 2019. So right before kind of everything went down with COVID. And it was about a year after I graduated from my MBA and was kind of like first starting my life, if you will. I was in a pretty intense job in corporate aerospace, working at a pretty high level. So a lot of fires throughout the day, a lot of stress. And unfortunately, at the same time, I was living at home with parents that were going through a pretty tumultuous divorce. And it kind of felt like during this period of time, everything was sort of crashing around me. It was like a stressful job. Parents went through a divorce. And unfortunately, around the same time, I had gone through sort of like a sexual assault type of situation with someone I was close to. So between all of these things, it was just like a really stressful time.
Yeah.
So about, I would say, 4 to 5 weeks after that incident had taken place, I started getting a lot of like pelvic related pain and symptoms that I had not ever felt before. And so naturally, I'd started, contacting my gynecologist that I worked, just annually with. And she had run a bunch of tests and that they had all come back negative. So we were kind of at a standstill. We didn't want to just throw antibiotics at me for no reason. So she suggested maybe getting some other opinions that she was close to within the community, other gynecologists. And so I had kind of gone gynecologist to gynecologist. Nothing really came out of any of these visits, but I was still in, some pretty bad pain.
Hmm.
One gynecologist towards the end had noted to me after understanding my history, kind of that I laid out at a high level, that it's kind of all maybe stemming from somewhere in your brain due to like some trauma.
Hmm.
And that kind of sparked my interest. And I was a little bit interested to see, what he meant by that, but he didn't really go into detail. But I would say that was sort of my first introduction to what could have been a mind body, introduction, but he didn't really share further. He just said, work through some of the trauma. Maybe it'll help resolve it. Some people it does, some people it doesn't. It's kind of case by case. And I was
Hmm.
like, okay. So this same doctor, however, though, said, we just want to do some nerve testing on you because you could have like some pudendal neuralgia from the incident that took place, some nerve damage. And that kind of was my first introduction to like the pudendal neuralgia world. I had never heard of this,
Right.
diagnosis. Kind of started going down the train of, as I'm sure many people do, sometimes the not so supportive support groups and the scary support groups, and some dark stories that you could read on there. And I remember kind of reading some of the patient stories on these, and I was like terrified because I was like, okay, I'm 23 years old. This cannot be my life. I started getting like kind of like catastrophizing, like, oh my goodness, but this is my life, going down this whole railroad, because at this point it had probably been about like 8 months and nothing was getting better. I had never had any health issues prior to this.
Sure.
So anything that I perceived as like causing the symptoms, which was like running, which I used to be like a very competitive runner and rock climber. Of course, you have like this harness on as you're rock climbing. I was like, no, like we are deleting all of these things that bring me so much joy. Yeah. And I'm just like cutting my life in half. So basically, I took like all the happiness away, started eating all these foods that were like anti-inflammatory to try and maybe like deflame the nerve, whatever. I had no clue. I was just like throwing darts at a board, hoping that I would get some relief. And I never really did.
Yeah.
Um, so I had seen another specialist. We had done a series of nerve blocks, which also didn't really give me much relief there. I had seen in Baltimore, this was probably the craziest of all the specialists. At this point, I was so desperate and I was recommended this surgeon in Baltimore. And he did these nerve tests on me. And he said, well, first of all, both of your pudendal nerves are malfunctioning and they need to be cut. But these other two nerves on both sides of you that are called the PFCN also need to be cut. So there's 4 nerves that we need to completely cut. And then you'll be better, but it'll take you 3 years because nerves take a really long time to like heal themselves. But we're going to cut it and then put the end of the nerve into your muscle. And you won't be able to like do any of the running that you used to do, but like maybe it'll give you some relief. And at this point, I was like, what is my life turning into? This is so scary. I had never gone through any sort of like major surgery. So you could say, you know, I've lived a really blessed life up until this point, and it just felt like everything was crashing. So to be honest, I was so desperate. This was probably like a little over a year and a half in. I did make like the surgical dates. I scheduled the surgery with this Baltimore surgeon. And so it was kind of approaching the surgery date, and I had like my follow-up before the surgery. So I was going to stay with him or stay in Baltimore leading up to the surgery, do a couple things. But luckily I had searched this surgeon online, and I mean, he had like 2 stars. Like a lot of these surgeries he was performing like were not good. Like people were leaving in a worse state that they came in. And unfortunately, sometimes it was like spouses that were writing their reviews because their spouse that got the surgery like had passed away due to, you know, mental health problems.
Wow.
So that was very scary. And of course, I'm like sitting here, it's like now it's in the middle of COVID, and it's like just to get into a doctor's office at all is so it's just really tough. So reading my notes now. At this point, I determined.
Did you cancel the surgery, I hope?
Yes, I canceled the surgery. Thank goodness. Like that, oh my goodness. I think back to that all the time. Can you even imagine what my life would have been? So, and then he's since retired actually. So thank goodness he's no longer affecting people. So anyways, at this point, I was like, well, let's try something that is like less invasive, but maybe still like helping the tissues, if you will. So I had gone to a few doctors that were like, pelvic floor therapists, which were like these lovely men and women that like really wanted to help. But unfortunately, I just bought a whole bunch of expensive tools and spent thousands of dollars for no relief. And again, this was during COVID. So it was like, we were outside in these tents behind their clinic because like, it was just crazy. So anyways, nothing seemed to work for me. And at this point, I had kind of made my own determination that like nobody could help me. And I'm sure many patients that you work with get to this point, like nobody could help me. I need to take matters into my own hands, unless I want to go through something really invasive, like a surgery, which I did not want to pursue. So I started doing research, and instead of searching like scary things like pain or symptoms from pudendal neuralgia, I started searching success stories with pudendal neuralgia, and kind of tried to like change my mindset. Like, okay, let's bring some like positivity into this aura, because right now I'm sitting here, it's like crazy. And my fiance, by the way, has been lovely throughout this entire process. And he's also very positive. So he's like, let's dive into this journey. We have all the time in the world. It's COVID. Like we have nothing else going on. We're going to fix this. So we just kind of like changed our mindset. Like we are going to figure this out. This is not our reality anymore. So I started searching success stories with pudendal neuralgia. And lo and behold, your videos popped up. I'm not sure if it's because you have success stories like in like as a whole subcategory of your channel, but it was amazing.
Yeah, but I also have success stories, and within the title it says pudendal neuralgia. So if you're asking Google or YouTube, you're inevitably going to find them. And so
exactly. And it was kind of like a crazy situation. So I was leaving. So by the way, these pelvic floor therapists I was seeing were like all over the country. It wasn't just like my community, because they were failing. I was not successful in my community with them. So I started searching like best pelvic floor therapists in the US, and I started flying to Colorado, all these different people spending probably $100,000. Like I'm not even joking. Luckily, you know, I was living at home and my parents were able to support me through this, but nothing else. So by the way, I found your success stories while I was wearing like a hazmat suit during COVID, like in the airport, leaving one of these pelvic floor therapists in Colorado. Because at this point, it wasn't working either. I had been with this guy for like 3 or 4 weeks, staying in Colorado with him to like do these sessions every week. And then I was going to fly back to New York, which is where I lived at the time. So found you in the airport amazingly, because I started just regaining a lot of hope. So I started out just probably, like you said, with just the Pudendal Neuralgia success stories. And I was like, these women and men sound like me. So this is totally identifiable with my story. For the first time, by the way, I had never really found someone that felt like they had gone through a similar journey. And I felt alone and isolated, like I'm sure many people do.
Yeah.
Very scary. So your videos were like my daily meditative ritual, if you will. Like it was like every morning was like, let's just listen to Dan. He's gonna like, because you start your day off and sometimes you're like, oh no, another day of this nightmare. But it's okay because Dan's videos are here. So like just have to shout out to you. They're so helpful. You have no idea. So listen to Dan. Sometimes I'd like binge watch and save old Dan videos, which I don't think you need to binge watch videos to get better. I'm not suggesting that, but sometimes it would help if I was like really in a funk.
Right.
So anyways, that started me climbing out of this like hole, if you will, because I was like deep in this hole. And that was like, okay, I'm seeing the light. So I started with that. Your videos introduced me to Sarno. And I'm a huge reader. So I was like, perfect. I will read all the books that I get my hands on. I started binge reading all of Sarno's books. To be honest, you were really the only like form of like online content I consumed I know there's a lot of others, but yours was like my favorite that I had found. So stuck with that. And like I mentioned, I cut out all of my physical activity. And I used to be very active before 2020. Marathon runner, things like that. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start just doing little walks. I'm just going to do like a little walk. And I had lost so much weight at this point. I was probably like 30 pounds less than I am now because I just didn't have an appetite. I was just everything was depressing, to be honest. And so I was like, let's just start with the walks and just making, bigger meals. Maybe it'll give me an appetite. So that's kind of what started it. And so every day it was like, the ritual of Dan and the walk. And it was just like this little empowering moment for me. I would just do it for like 20 minutes and it was amazing. And then I would later read the Sarno books. I was still working remotely at this time. So the walks didn't cause me any pain like I thought they were before. And so it turned into, and again, I just want to preface, I don't suggest anyone like jump into physical activity, like definitely listen to your body. But I was listening to my body and my body was kind of saying like, you're safe, it's okay. I was like reinstating safety into my body by like taking it slow, listening to it. I decided randomly during COVID again, that I was going to do a little jog from like one mailbox to the next. It was probably like 50 meters slow. And nothing flared up, like nothing hurt. It just felt like my old running. And I was like, oh, like this, maybe this could work, It was like this light bulb moment. I was like, maybe this is something that could turn into, maybe I do this once a week. Like, so I was like, let's just do the mailbox run once a week. We'll just start so slow. Because the last thing I wanted was then to revert. And then mentally it was going to be, and I will not say this was like a linear path by any means. So this was definitely like, there were little pivots there. So anyways, what started out for months of just like a little tiny jog has now in the current state turned into half marathon running in the mountains of Utah. So we'll get to that, but it's a very good place that I'm in now.
That's awesome.
So yeah, stumbled upon your videos and kind of just try, and I'd never joined your support groups, really wanted to at one point, but I just kind of started realizing I was getting so much better just from listening to you and instating your teachings. So couple of things I just wrote down that really were helpful to me. And I think it's really individual to everyone. But this is what helped me was that I just, instead of telling myself all the time, which in the beginning, I was just trying to tell myself like, you're safe, you're safe. And I think maybe that could work for a few people, but for me, it wasn't working. Like me just saying I'm safe, like that didn't have anything to back it.
It falls on deaf ears after like the third time you say it.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, I was trying to tell myself this and my body's like, we're not safe. Like, what are you talking about? So it was just pointless. It was just like a cycle. So then I started to teach myself that I was safe by doing these really small movements and getting really good results from them. Really good results as in not flaring myself up. So I was reinstating yoga, which I used to be a yoga teacher. So it was like a huge part of my just daily practice that I had to give up. But I started doing yoga again. Just try to stay relaxed and calm. Like if I noticed that I was in higher periods of stress, I would have symptoms that came back in the beginning. Now I know how to manage that because obviously I still work in aerospace. Like my life is still going to be stressful. Um, so you can't delete stress from your life, but I think you could find ways to like manage stress, if you will. Um, so that was very interesting. And then the only other thing that will say really was helpful was that I made a note on my phone for inevitably when symptoms would arise. It was kind of like my cheat sheet, like my go-to when I'm not feeling like my most logical self. Like let's make a cheat sheet when I'm in a logical state that like I could reference when I'm in this really frantic state of like feeling a symptom coming back.
Right.
Because it kind of brings you back to like that dark place sometimes when you feel it. So my cheat sheet, if you will, has like a lot of your videos that I loved. I would like save the links to those
Right.
and just little like quotes or reminders that would kind of like bring me back to earth and make me feel safe, and just reminders that like you've been doing so well. I wouldn't put, X amount of time or anything like that, but just like reminders of what I've done successfully without pain, and that like you can get back to that state. This is just maybe something psychologically going on that's causing you to have some distractions in your body in the form of these physical feelings. And it's just trying to distract you from maybe what might be going on in your brain. That's just how I look at it.
Right.
So that was extremely helpful. But yeah, like I kind of said, I've now been pain-free for like a year and a half. So it's been really consistent. And I just kind of wanted to share my story here for anyone that might have been like me at one point and felt isolated and like there was no way out, that really this approach could be extremely helpful. And I will say now, I mean, my life includes backpacking in Europe with like giant backpacks for like months at a time. Just did that last year. And before, mind you, I couldn't even lift like a 3-pound weight without like flaring myself up. Half marathons regularly. I regularly run like 7 miles a day. Like I will probably be doing today, lifting weights, sitting all day with no pain, still work a stressful job. So you don't have to, eliminate the stress or anything like that, but it's just managing it.
That is awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great point. You don't have to manage stress. Stress is life. Life is stressful. Um, so it sounds like you got some clarity and you began to, I guess, think and feel more safety. And
Yes.
it wasn't a light switch. It was kind of a little bit gradual,
Yes.
right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And over time, you started to test. I'm going to go for a walk. Gradual, right? Um, yeah, gradual.
Yes.
And with that gradual exposure, you started to teach, like you said, you used that word specifically to teach yourself that movement is safe.
Yes.
A short
Exactly.
jog, a little bit of yoga, a little bit of stretching. I don't mean to interrupt here, but I don't know if you saw me like looking this way before. Um, it was weird, and I think Pennsylvania just experienced an earthquake
Oh my gosh.
because I've now had two different people text me and say, "Did you just have an earthquake?"
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
I don't know what's going on, but yeah, I felt shaking here. And sometimes it's like a truck will pull into the driveway, you hear a little rumble, but no, this was
Like
different.
a different
So
level.
what an
That's
interesting
crazy.
interlude to this video here, but that was a little bit freaky.
Yeah, I hope everything's okay.
Well, it seems to be. I'm still here. The internet's still working. I don't know
But
really quite what's going on or if that'll happen again, but kind of bizarre.
yeah.
Kind of bizarre. But my friend who texted me is a solid 30 miles away,
Oh my
and
gosh.
they felt it too. And I don't know where this guy who was texting me a second ago.
Oh my gosh.
So sorry to the people watching this, but that was a really interesting, distracting thing.
Yeah, I'll say.
So, back to the recovery. You've been pain-free for about a year and a half.
Mm.
What would you say to the people who are going down the rabbit hole of pudendal neuralgia?
I would definitely start by saying not to, at least to the best of your ability, not to consume some of the active support groups that are out there, because and the only reason I say that, it's not that they're not supportive to everyone, but for the majority, I wouldn't say they are supportive, because it's like a pretty negative culture on some of those. And when I was at a really low point, the last thing I needed was to see unsuccess stories, people that weren't successful and maybe kind of kept themselves in this like negative feedback loop, or I don't know, it just kind of seemed like the people that were interacting with each other were like these lifers, if you will. They just had succumbed to the idea that this was life, and but not in like an acceptance way, in like a very negative sort of way. So I did not find it personally helpful, and I wouldn't recommend anyone that's in that state to even go there.
I call those bad neighborhoods,
That's interesting.
right? Um, yeah, I mean, basically, you wouldn't go to a new city and go into the worst neighborhood at night. And that's
Right.
exactly the impact that these support groups feel like, because you go there and you're just terrified.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's like everything they've tried and everything that's failed. And it's just crazy. It gets a little crazy on those.
Yeah. So the recommendations for other people is to number one, open your eyes up that, especially given the chaos which you were experiencing at the time all of this started. And look, we can look for meanings behind symptoms, but when you have pelvic pain in a reasonably short period of time after that assault that you suffered, those dots are completely very well connected. Some people don't have dots that are as easily connected, but um, even that doesn't guarantee anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I will say too, I don't think it's totally necessary to like relive your trauma or like rehash it out. I don't even think that that would even be like a net positive for a lot of people. But I think just, in some way kind of trying to accept your situation. But at one point, I thought I had to really dive into this assault situation, and I really didn't find a lot of benefit there, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I
So,
don't I don't think we need to go revisit, re-traumatize ourselves, and I am not a trauma informed specialist. I've not studied trauma. I've not gotten trained in how to deal with trauma.
right.
My point of view is very, very simple. If the trauma is not haunting you today, why go visit it?
Yes.
And many people have told me their personal stories of going back to revisit their traumas. And not only are they getting more intense emotional challenges, but the physical symptoms can absolutely be increasing as well, because you are creating more perceived danger by revisiting the traumas in some cases over and over and over again. And so I don't believe that is necessary to eliminate physical symptoms.
Mhm.
There may be reasons for you to do some emotional work with a therapist regarding what happened.
Sure.
I'm
Sure.
not convinced that is the key and the light switch to turn off the pain,
Yeah.
because what you proved was, I didn't really want to spend a lot of time going back there.
Yes.
You focused on, oh, good. I don't have nerves that need to be cut and surgically altered. I don't have to limit my life. I can resume movement. You created safety despite what happened to you several years ago.
Yes.
And it was the
Exactly.
safety that helped you turn down the symptoms, not necessarily any work that you did regarding the actual trauma. So I
Exactly.
believe the reason we can still be in pain years later may have nothing to do with what initially caused it.
Totally.
So I'm
Yes.
not doubting that the chaos in your life is what initiated this.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
how do you go fix the past anyway?
Yeah.
What do
Exactly.
you do with that? Like, what do you do with the emotions surrounding, the chaos at home, the parents' divorce, and this sexual assault thing? How do you go back and fix that? I think very simplistic. I'm sure some people who know a lot about trauma are going to tell me I'm wrong, but I think the best way to deal with past trauma is to put it down and stop revisiting it all the time.
Absolutely. It's
And
really
then
interesting.
focus on present. I'm okay now. And further, for somebody with symptoms, not only am I okay emotionally and physically now from the standpoint of nobody is assaulting me, but I'm okay emotionally, mentally, physically, because my body's not broken in the first place. This was just like the brain alarm system turning on symptoms to try to keep us safe. And
Exactly.
unfortunately, countless doctors, uh, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars spent pursuing a cure when in fact these doctors just they don't understand.
Yeah. It
One
is.
doctor who said it may have something to do with, the trauma, brilliant. But unfortunately, when you're in a panic and you're hurting so bad, that message doesn't get in. You're like, no, there must be a physical cause. And then
Right.
if somebody does nerve testing and says it's not working, then it's like your nerves aren't working. You're like, holy shit, the test says my nerves are the problem.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think it's so easy too to like see it, the results of a test like that, and just immediately attribute it like, yep, found the answer, like must be this, physical thing that was found on the scan. Where, you could scan anyone else on the street and maybe their nerve results would come back the same, but they don't have pain. So it's just, you can't always attribute like what the scans are telling you to what you're like physically feeling, I think.
Yeah. And I think when we're in the experience of perceived danger creating pain or other symptoms,
Mhm.
if the brain can create those symptoms, then it can also create the environment where the nerves don't test properly. It
Exactly.
doesn't mean it's truly a neurological disorder with the nerves down in that pelvic region. It just means that with the brain perceiving danger, the testing may not be accurate. The test may
Absolutely.
be accurate, but the brain still can create an environment where the testing is not there.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I'm thrilled that my videos and the success stories that you've watched it sounds like a turning point for you. It was like that, light at the end of the tunnel. Um, I'm thrilled that you got into your little routine, you know, Dan's video. He started taking a walk, maybe listening
Mhm.
while you were walking. Um, and I love how you caution people, like, don't just go out and start running a marathon. Like, just ease into it because if perceived danger is what's creating the symptoms, then we don't want to scare ourselves by jumping right back into something really hard. Because some people are be like, oh, so I'm fine? Good. I'm going to go do this and then flare up. And then all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, maybe it was physical because maybe I did do too much and doubt sets in. So I
Exactly.
love the way you eased into it. From the time you started finding out about this mind body stuff, my videos, until the time you really felt some improvement and then complete recovery. Can you give me a time span?
Yeah, so from the onset, so that was during 2020 in the airport. It probably took me a good 3 to 4 months to truly like believe. And I think when I truly like put 100% of belief into it, because you read something that's so new to you, there's going to be like some level of doubt just naturally. So
Yeah.
I was like, I want to believe as soon as I found this out. Like, this sounds like me, like I'm perfectionist, type A, high achiever, do gooder, whatever. But how can I fully allow myself to feel this safety and belief in what this is? And so, yeah, that probably took me about 3 to 4 months. And then for me to fully feel 100% was probably like 6 to 7-ish months after I fully believed, was regularly instating, the teachings and the learnings. It took me, yeah, a little over half a year. So not too long.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. And because inevitably, if I didn't ask that question, somebody in the comments would have.
Okay. That makes
Well,
sense.
how
Yeah,
long
for
did it take
sure.
her? And I
Everyone's
guarantee people,
different
I
though.
guarantee people will say, but what did you do specifically? Like, did you meditate? Did you do this? Did you? And in many cases, I don't believe it's what we do. I believe it's the safety that comes from the knowledge, which helps to lower the fear. And then it's just consistently reinforcing the fact that I'm not sick, I'm not broken. So everybody's looking for that key. Well, did they meditate? Did they do breath work? What was the
Yep.
thing that you did that turned off the symptoms? And
Right.
I call it the holy crap moment, or you know, the deep knowing, where we take the intellectual knowledge that comes from a video or from a book and go, this is my situation.
Yes.
This makes sense. I'm
Ex-
not broken. Like,
exactly.
holy crap, I'm really okay. I
Yes.
think that is so much more important than all of the tools and techniques and there's so many mind body practitioners out there that have their routines, some of them very involved, including, journaling, meditation, breath work, spend an hour or more a day doing this stuff, listening to podcasts, doing 85 things, participating in the Facebook groups all day, every day. And I can say that once you truly recognize that the perception of danger is what's creating the symptoms, and yes, it applies to me, there's not a lot to do other than consistently remind yourself of that fact and dial down the fear and
Exactly.
ease back into movement. And so now
Yes.
you're running half marathons
Yeah.
in the mountains of Utah. So that's
Yeah, in the mountains.
climbing those hills and mountains.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it's total, 180, obviously. But yeah, and I think kind of what I was stating earlier, maybe not so direct, but I was in the beginning looking so much for someone who had like my exact story, my exact symptoms. And I think dependent on what people are feeling physically, like you may not find a story with those exact symptoms, but to still have the belief and to try the TMS route, because you may not find someone that has, the exact pain that you're feeling or whatever, but to still, try and still that belief and still practice and just try, I think would be a great benefit.
Okay. Um, yeah, that's great, because a lot of people will be like, but I can't find somebody with my exact symptoms, so I don't believe this. And I'm like, but you should, because whether it be you with your pelvic area pains, or me with my back pain, or other people with daily headaches or migraines, or dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of symptoms, it doesn't matter, because the root cause of all of it is the brain perceiving danger. So if you're
Right.
watching this and going, yeah, but my symptoms are different, what I'm going to say is it doesn't matter. It
Yeah.
really doesn't, because you've got one commonality with Gabby here. You've got a brain that's doing its job and protecting us, and it doesn't have language. It can't be like, that situation and that situation, boy, there's some dangerous stuff. So, hey, you're in danger. No, the brain's voice, the subconscious brain's voice is symptoms.
Yes, absolutely. And I think mindset too is such a powerful thing to have. If you can shift your mindset from, why is my brain, causing me all these things? It's like your brain is just trying to work for you and for your body, and alert it to different things, that you might need to do some checking in on, if you're stressed or whatever. So, you're living in a human body. Sometimes I do feel like a twinge here and there. And it's just a reminder for me to do a quick check-in, see
Yeah,
where we're at. Maybe I don't even realize the tumultuous nature of my brain at that moment. So just a difference in mindset, I guess.
very cool. Anything else you want to really share? Because this was wonderful. I mean, you've
Oh,
kind of given the classic history, bad shit going on in your life,
yeah.
symptoms start, medicalized, panicked, fear, wasted time, money, energy, lots of nocebos, which are negative statements that say you're broken, you're broken, you're broken. Lots of failed treatments, lots of doctors going, don't know, which leave us feeling very helpless and hopeless. and accurate knowledge as to how this system works was really your cure.
Exactly.
We can
Yeah,
almost call it knowledge and safety therapy. You got the right
absolutely.
knowledge and you applied safety, and boom, within 6 months, you were virtually all better. And
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
that's
But yeah,
brilliant.
no, I just wanted to share, just because I got so much out of your videos and out of your other, success stories. I just wanted to contribute to that, if you will. If it even just
That's
helps one person, that would be great.
that's beautiful. Well, I really appreciate you doing that, and your success story will help so many people. Um, Partly in the fact that the simple approach is what worked for you. We
Yes.
didn't talk about doing 18 different mind body approaches and techniques and all sorts of things. There may be some aspects to that that's valuable, but I think you took the shortcut, which is once you understood that it was perceived danger, not an actual physical body problem, I think you intuitively knew your job was to convey safety over
Ex-
and over and over again. I'm not going to doubt the cause anymore. I'm not going to run back to doctors if I have a bad day. I'm just going to stick with the process. Simple. Perceived danger, so safety is a solution.
Yes.
You overlaid the perceived danger with the safety outweighed the danger, symptoms started getting better, you expanded your activity, and you got your life back
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
your 20s.
Yeah, in my 20s. Yeah. And I thought my life was over. Like it was, but yeah, there's so much hope.
Understandably. Yeah, so this is brilliant. Folks, this stuff works. Gabby is proof. Gabby, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure you're
Absolutely.
going to inspire a lot of people, particularly with pelvic pain and, diagnoses of pudendal neuralgia. But you're going to inspire a lot of people.
I hope so.
So
Awesome.
that's awesome. So proud of you.
Thank
If I
you.
can ever do anything for you, by all means, reach out. But
Okay.
otherwise, I want to thank you because
Awesome.
this was
Absolutely.
great. Brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So long.
See ya.
Bye-bye.